Hello and good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you're based in the world. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you guys today. My name is Gabriele. I'm head of marketing and community and ShapesXR, and I'm here today with two incredible guests: Cody Char, director of product design at TRIPP, and Michael Markman, head of design at our very own ShapesXR. So, guys, it is a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's fun to be here.
So
Sure.
we are organizing this, right? Because we are just at the day after, like a big and massive endeavor that we have went through at ShapesXR to provide you guys the best and one of the most powerful prototyping tool for XR, and that is the addition of the animation feature. It's been in the making for months, and we went through several challenges, but we are here to share with you a little bit how you can now bring your design to life. And in general, we are going to discuss not only about animation as a whole, but more broadly about the approach of what needs to be done, what can be done when designing for XR, when designing for these spatial interfaces and spaces. But before I talk too much, maybe we should go ahead, and while people kind of like start coming in a bit, I wanted to ask maybe for both of you to give an intro. Maybe Cody, why don't you start?
Sure. Yeah, fantastic. I am the director of product design at TRIPP. I've been at TRIPP for about 2 years now. We work greatly in the mental wellness space. We are on a lot of VR headsets. We're on the PlayStation, we're on Quest, we're on Pico, Apple Vision Pro, Snap, like the list goes on. We're on many different platforms, as well as mobile, which we're ramping up more and more each day. And then as far as my experience in the spatial design space, I've been working in it since 2018, where I started at Meta, working on the Orion AR glasses. And I've been using Shapes since you were Tavori way back in the day. So it's really amazing seeing the evolution of the software and where you guys have taken it and the new feature sets. So having animation is a big one. It's a big milestone. So congratulations to you guys.
Thank you. And by the way, I just want to drop in some people are saying hi. Ashish, one of our, let's say, one of very trusted user. Actually, some of his creation in space went also ended up in the launch trailer for animation. So thank you very much, Ashish, for being here with us. And if there is anybody here around, also, I mean, where are you from, right? We will always love to know where you guys are, whether on YouTube or LinkedIn, wherever you're following us. So please drop a message. Michael, what about you?
Hi, I'm the head of design at ShapesXR. I've been with Shapes for a few years now. I've been working in XR since the end of 2016. So almost about 9 years now. I've worked on a variety of different tools, products. I worked on a game called Poker VR. I worked at a VR meetings app called Arthur. I've worked on some games, films, all sorts of stuff. But my obsession has always been design tooling. And so, yeah, and we've been working on animation for a while now. It's been a big team effort. And we got it out the door, and I'm super excited to talk to you all about it.
So we got more people coming. Hi. I know that I will not try to pronounce your name because I know I'll butcher it. So, but hi, Kajari, it's a pleasure to have you here. So I want to start, and please, I mean, for everybody that is here around. So there is also Omar is coming in, greeting from Mexico. Want to create augmented reality experiences? Is Shapes the right tool?
Yes.
Who? Okay. Look,
the answer is always yes.
I think we had some kind of question in mind, but I think it's good to give space to people that are joining live. So maybe we can just start answering these questions, and maybe first Michael, and then you, Cody, could chip in whether you have used it for some, because you mentioned you are on spectacles. So maybe something to measure. So Michael, can you use Shapes to design augmented reality experiences?
Yeah, so we have features. You can turn on pass-through mixed reality in Shapes. We also have simulation of different FOV limitations for augmented reality headsets. And so you can really design and, you know, prototype in high fidelity with animations directly in Shapes.
Yeah, and then you can also set up your room. So in addition to the pass-through, you can use the like detected surfaces, and it'll outline the mesh that's detected there, and then you can start putting things locked to your walls, to your floors, and snap things in a persistent way. So if you design something and then you want to come back like a day later, you just press the little go button and it snaps everything back into the place where it was when you were designing before. So you can do things in that kind of like one-to-one scale, which is important for AR.
Yeah, and this is especially true when it's about mixed reality in a sense, Cody, right? And we do have other things like, for example, this pass-through material that allows to simulate the occlusion of physical objects. So there are many layers that you can experiment with, but even when it's just AR glasses, Michael mentioned this great thing that is this simulated FOV. So only the objects that are within this restricted field of view then show up in your view, and you can customize it. So that's very powerful. So Omar, I hope that answered your questions. Siciliana also say hi. Ciao Siciliana, immagino sei italiana, but anyway, hi to see. Nice to have you here. And we also got more people. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm from India, following on LinkedIn. Hi, it's a pleasure to have you, Rahul. So, Michael, can you explain us the new animation feature? How does it work?
Sure. So basically, we really wanted something that was simple and understandable, something that would be familiar to like traditional designers who are used to tools like Figma. So what we've basically done is now you have what we call like frames in Shapes, kind of like you have frames in Figma. These are essentially like states of all your objects on a scene, or like slides in a PowerPoint. And then you duplicate your frames and you move objects around. You can change their color, change their properties. And then as you swap between frames, you can animate that transition. So essentially we're tweening between the differences between frames. This is really similar to like Smart Animate in Figma. It's really similar to like Magic Move in Keynote or PowerPoint. And so you really have to worry, you can animate a bunch of objects all at the same time, but you only have to worry about like the transition setting. That's just the basics of how it works. We wanted something that'd be familiar to Shapes users and to people who've used tools like Figma in the past.
And of course, because animation has been a feature that it's been asked several times, right? Because of its importance, also when communicating ideas. So I was curious to hear maybe from Cody. Cody, what is the importance and the role of animation or motion in a designer workflow or communicative power, so to say?
Yeah. To put it short, motion is huge. There's that famous saying of like communication is 55% based on body language, and that's for person to person. But we seldom talk about it in the context of user interfaces and user interactions. And it's the same thing. You have an array of buttons, you have things loading in and out, and we don't often talk about how motion is missing. Often it's one of the last things to get added. So it changes how your experience feels. And it's one of those things like it's felt, not seen, which is why perhaps it falls to the bottom of the list. Because as you're developing these things and presenting it to peers or leadership, it's one of those things that are felt and not seen. So adding in features to Shapes that allows motion is just going to like further enhance the fidelity of these things. The ideal is when we make these prototypes in ShapesXR that it gets as close to the end product as we can, and we also don't want to sacrifice like doing it quickly and like being scrappy and iterative. So I'm a big fan of adding the motion because it's going to make everything feel much better.
So maybe to also satiate some anger or curiosity, I just wanted to drop a quick video showing out what is high-level this animation. And I mean, of course, stay with us and keep asking questions because we would love also to hear from you. And we are also soon going in one of these spaces and we're going to see and experience it firsthand. But maybe let's play a very short clip of what animation looks like. And so there you have it, right? So it's also the ability to have that twinning automatically, but be able still to have some form of control, like set the timing, set the transition. So there is indeed a lot going on and a lot is possible with animation. So maybe before we go back into Shapes and discuss that, so there are, of course, Ashish mentioning, hey, my animation demo was inspired by one of Cody's earlier experiment. Also, just for nostalgia's sake, want to share earlier jam with it together on Shapes. So also like a regular from Ashish. And so the idea is also I wanted to ask you, Cody, how have you been using Shapes in your role at TRIPP? Even if we just take a step aside for a second from animation.
Yeah, it fills a lot of needs. We use it a lot for storyboarding. So there'll be new concepts that kind of like graze the conversations in our meetings outside of Shapes, just kind of in our daily stand-ups. And the more you can breathe some life into some of those ideas, the better chance they have of like getting through to the end. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, etc., yada yada. It's pretty much true. Like if you send someone a document, a sheet of words, they're not going to read it. They're going to scan through it. They're going to misinterpret it. If you send them imagery, 10 panels that communicate a storyboard, they're going to get it, and it crosses language barriers. So we use it a lot for storyboarding because it is so fast to kind of iterate. We use it for brainstorms because we work in a spatial medium. Wouldn't it be a shame if we did all of our brainstorms in something like Figma or just kind of like Spoken or Post-it notes, when you could have the whole team just in there in VR with you, making interfaces that are meant to be consumed in VR, and to create it in VR is huge. So we use it for that. And then kind of coming full circle, it's like the documentation of it. So sending these things over to the fence to engineering, to tech artists. Again, if you send them a sheet of words, it's gonna get overlooked or misinterpreted. If you send them images, even better. And now you can embed these suckers like in a web page format, or in Jira or Confluence or the things that we use to document these things. And it can be interactive. You can have them move around in 3D. I think it's kind of the future of documentation for this field, where you don't have to just export static images. You can have them fly through it and use WASD on their keyboard. So even if they're not, if they don't have the opportunity to go into headsets to see these things, they can at least see it on the computer, through whatever means they have available to them. So storyboarding, team brainstorms, documentation, user testing, yes. And, honestly, it's one of my happy places, just going into VR and like doodling and being in a scene and making things.
And I just wanted to pull up this because later we're going to
Yeah.
maybe hop in this space, but just to give impression, because we always mention about VR, but one of the things that we have also recently put a lot of effort is indeed what we call the web editor. So in a sense that you can start creating, and as here we go, Char actually, Cody is in, his headset is there, we see it there moving, but it's this idea that you can still move around and have the ability to have the scene and do your storyboarding in it. And consequently join not only from VR, and this is true also from animation, but we are going to get into it later, so that we can actually be in VR. So I just want to ask also maybe briefly to Michael. So one of the questions is that animation is so... it also has an extra cost in itself, right? So it has this extra effort that you put into adding motion to your prototype. In Shapes now, everything is kind of like done for you, but still there is that mental load about thinking and adding that layer of complexity. How do you balance the depth or the fidelity of a prototype throughout the design process? When is that you start thinking, okay, here I really need to have motion? And sometimes, let's be honest, might be also After Effects, sometimes might be other ways. But if you approach more broadly motion as something that you add on top of your prototype, at what stage do you tend to use it?
So like I think there's different schools of thought on this topic. Like some people say like motion is something you add at the end, like your design should work even if there is no motion. And I tend to agree. Like even in our own implementation, like some of my design for our UI had more animation than the actual UI does. So from that perspective, I think it's really important that your design works without motion. Like it has to be right. So I think you should always start without any motion. But I do find myself, like, since animation's on by default, I have just been designing with motion. I think it depends on what you're doing. I think it depends on your own process, depends on, like how essential is motion to your design. Will it be part of your final implementation? Yeah, like I think, again, there's competing schools of thought, and I haven't really settled on a specific answer. Like some days some designs I'm like, okay, this doesn't need motion. Sometimes I'm like, I'm just gonna especially when I'm like, I think just like kind of rolling, just like in flow mode, like, just brainstorming. I like just already having the motion in there.
Cody, what about you? I mean, we were saying about different school of thoughts, but also because you have created also different kind of prototypes, some of that you share, for example, online, that I think are more based on After Effects, for example, right? Where there is also that form of motion, where also the barrier and the weight of adding that and creating that, I suppose, is also like more time consuming. So when do you decide when to add motion?
I think I'm somewhat biased because I do come from a motion graphic design background professionally. And I have used a lot of After Effects and Cinema 4D and MoGraph is my background. So from the get-go, I recommend at least having an opinion on it from the get-go, even if you don't prototype motion in there in your first iteration. Have some thoughts of like, will these things tween? Are they going to snap immediately? Yeah. I say early is better. Because it does get overlooked when you get to the end and you're out of scope for what the engineers can create. Sometimes it can be the kind of thing that would have been easier if the engineers knew that it was in the docket, like from the get-go. So yeah, I'd say be ambitious with how much motion you add from the beginning, but cognizant that it doesn't always make it because of scope and engineering resources.
And I think also depends on your skills, right? Because of course, if you come from a motion graphic design, then on the background, then I can see that being more up your alley than someone that maybe is just a 3D artist, or maybe
Totally.
it's just
Yeah.
2D design.
But, like shoot for the moon and get some stars kind of thing.
Fair. So, I mean, I'm curious also, by the way, people online, like, do you add motion to your prototype? Do you at all? Right? Because a lot of these sometimes nowadays still happens on Figma that has some motions. Do you animate ever on Figma? Do you ever build something maybe that is in Unity that has animation? What about Blender? I think motion it's an important part, and but it adds that extra level of complexity and cost to the project, right? That makes it, let's say, an investment, so to say, and sometimes a worth investment. Curious to hear what you guys are thinking, whoever is online. But maybe what we can do is, Michael, maybe we can show some of the recent samples to give an impression of how actually these look like. So I'm gonna now put on my headset, cast my screen, and then you, Michael, can maybe guide us through this space. Let me go in. Give me a second. This at the right scale and then start casting. Okay.
Doing it live is always fun.
No, I mean, that's our daily. And up to stage. Here we are. So this is one of the sample. So if we go back to the lobby,
very talented Kate Bielinski.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to show that there is a new set, a complete new library of samples that you can explore, where we have paid a lot of attention to remaking those animation. And indeed, Michael, you were saying?
And with our new materials.
Right. Let's not forget. Maybe we can look at some of those spaces as well. So Tanya, of course, one of our super talented internal designer, and Kate, who has really blown our mind. One, including this beautiful space here that we're going to experience. So in Shapes, by the way, when we look at so we say we have these beautiful tooltips that guide you to the different steps, but this is like, each one of these is a frame with a different timing and interpolation between. At any moment, I can push play and then start playing the prototype. Mike, do you want to get
experience with hands?
Yes, I am now moving away my hands, and let me just move it a little bit away from the mic so that I don't clap the mic. And here we are. So here we are. So this is now basically like a configurator experience. So I can, for example, touch certain area, or maybe like swipe and get the enlarge the car, but also, oops.
No, that was it. So you can see some of these animations are triggered through interactions, and some of them are triggered through just delays. The idea is, no matter what frame you connect, you're always going to transition between the differences. If objects exist on both frames, like if they have, their visibility is turned on, those objects are going to animate. If an object doesn't exist on a frame, it'll just, when you go to the frame where it does exist, it'll gently fade in.
Yeah.
So Kate's done, for example, with that wheel hub, when she goes back to the frame where it disappears, she's actually reducing the transparency as she moves it, and then has it, it's different from not existing. There's an object that we have like a little eyeball icon for visibility, but that's different from turning like its transparency to 0. This is like a really important thing to note.
Yeah. And what we can do, maybe I can kind of like try to show what we...
Yeah, so if you want to go into edit mode now.
Yeah. So I'm now
when you're in edit mode, the animations will still work, so you can edit preview as you're editing.
Right. So now we are like here, and here we are. This is the step that you were saying, right?
Yeah. So if you click on that wheel hub asset with the
This
select
one, right?
tool, no,
Right.
the text part at the top.
This.
Yeah. So now if you go back a frame, so you can see that she's reduced the material to 0. And that's the property as well, so it's moving its position, but it's also but she's taking reduced its she's turned, and you can also accomplish that with the visibility toggle. That's the visibility toggle is useful for like specifically the percentage slider there. This is really useful if you have like a group that has like an object of like 15 materials. Anyway, these are little esoteric things that I just wanted to note for anyone who's watching. I figure you guys are the real fans.
I mean, that's why people are here as well, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Michael.
Yeah, another cool feature is the way that copy and paste work. So this is a copy button. Once you've copied it, so you copy this and then you go to the next frame or another frame. So if you hit paste now, you can choose to paste it as a new object, or you can just paste. You can paste its the material properties. So if you paste material, for example, right now it'll appear. It'll be visible again. And then if you paste the transform, and you can also just paste all the properties. This is really useful when you're like trying to align objects across frames. So like, for example, I might replace it with like a different graphic. And what I'll do is I'll copy the old graphic, and then I'll paste the transform values onto the new graphic. Again, these are like advanced tips, right? And the basics are just object is here on one frame, and now it's bigger and over here on second frame. And when you switch between the frames, you can show that with transition settings. You can change the duration, you can change the easing, and that'll adjust how your animation, actually, works.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think like high level for everybody that is here, an important thing to know is you don't just animate the appearance, disappearance, or position or scale of an object between the two stages, but there are also their properties that are animated. So this means the material, the color, and this allows you and unlock these different opportunities. Like, for example, the one that Michael was mentioning regarding feasibility, regarding material, and so on, right? So these are all things that increase the opportunities and the power of the feature, so to say.
You can change it, you can animate it.
Correct. So so this was indeed an example. And sorry, I just want to go back because there was a moment when I was in the car that kind of like took me a little off guard here. And now I'm not animated. Yes, now I'm animated. This is very nice.
So what's happening here is the car stays in place, but all the objects are animating around. So if Gab, you zoom out.
Exactly. Let me do it. So I'm here and I go back. Right.
Nice.
And that's it.
Yeah, I think that opens the door to new use cases for shapes, honestly, because in the same way that people have been using Quill for these kind of like cinematic type environments, you can do things that are a lot more narrative based with emotion added.
Absolutely. Sorry, Michael. Do you wanted to add something?
No, I think that's pretty much nailed it.
Okay, then I think that we were wondering before the conversation. Let me see if there is any questions from people. So curious to hear if you have any questions in the meantime while we kind of like go through this. But maybe Cody, how about you kind of like get us a bit in your space, right? I would be curious to see some of your design and maybe now how they look. That animation has been automatically added to everything. So let's check it out.
Yeah, you can give me a second to get
of course. I am now. The space should be here. still there. Yes, here we are. And it is loading. Let's fill in the the silence in some way. So, what's the project about, Cody?
Yeah, so we're heading into a project that I made long before animation was available. I myself have only been using it for a short while. It hasn't been out that long. So this will be kind of me creating something somewhat from scratch from a project that had intended to convey motion before that was an option. So you'll see that the frames in there are kind of like I interpolate like each of the states. There we go. Let me mute myself in the headset. I'll mute myself there.
Yeah.
Hi. How's it going?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you can do follow along mode.
Yes, it's a sync.
Yeah, collab.
And Cody, you can maybe also discuss how you would animate this in the new system.
Yeah, so here, let me just flip through it. This is an example of a logo animation when you first launch the VR app. Right now, we have a kind of a lotus flower that is floating in space. We want to add water and kind of like more environment to it, as well as the option to skip down there. So it's the sequence of a hummingbird kind of swinging in, drinking from this lotus flower, and then like tripping out and flying up with a logo reveal. And then from there, we animate into the home screen. So this is meant to emphasize like the continuity between states. And at the time, we had no animation feature, so it was just making like many frames to communicate one thing. So here, what I'll be doing is I could probably delete a bunch of these in between frames, which will save me space and memory. And then I can try to get these features kind of animating. Yeah.
And so at the end, how did you? Was this also supposed to work in mixed reality or only in VR?
For this particular one, it would be in the way I designed it would be in VR, but we could do it with mixed reality, right? Like you could have like a little window for this or something.
Yeah.
Or have pass through around the edges. You could dim the room. You could do various things to kind of like add that MR spice to it. So we're gonna do this live. This will be a lot of me kind of tinkering around. If the two of you want to kind of like chat about anything or kind of guide me through what you recommend.
I mean, animation, like animated logo, it's especially in 3D. I think it's another challenge, Michael. I mean, we got ours that actually came out really nice. I mean, I still love our animator animation screen, but yes, let's say that.
It was a little sneak peek of because it's a parallel of how the carousel works on the carousel menu.
Exactly. Very good, very well pointed.
We had his vision for a long time, everyone.
Yes, and it is really indeed that idea of motions, but it's something that sometimes it can be tricky, right? It can be tricky to bring up that animation view. And Cody, I have a question because I don't see things animating. Maybe well in.
There we go. Look at that. Look how fast that was. Wow,
pretty quick.
So fast, so simple.
Gee, wow. So all I did there is I just kind of created a new duplicate of the frame, and then I scaled up these two elements. So this is meant to represent like, oh, you've got the spotlight on this thing that grows. It should also perhaps make this flower get brighter. So let me go ahead and like noodle on that and see if I can edit the colors here in the second frame.
So, by the way, we haven't scripted this. This is Cody really firsthand improvising in real time. So, for everybody here, I think it's pretty astonishing.
This is it's very on the fly. Like I did not do any of this.
You can see the color change in real time.
Yeah, I see that. I can testify.
Yeah. I can even do what material settings. Ooh, I can make it shiny. Perhaps emission. Ooh, yeah, that's the stuff I want because I want to make it nice and bright. So let's make a few of these emissive. You know what I'm going to do instead? So I'm going to make a duplicate of this, put it on here, and then have like the inside of it be the glowy part.
Ooh.
Maybe. Let me make a duplicate here.
Yeah, but I think it does make sense. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. And then I'll just change these ones to not be emissive. We're going for a look. We're going for a vibe here.
Yeah, that's it. I think oh, here we go.
Yeah, and I'll make that kind of like change to something else.
You could also turn up and like Gab, you could make the spotlight a little more yellow.
I cannot edit. So
Oh, here, I can make that change. I can only view. I'm actually not seeing the.
Yeah, but I think we get the idea, right?
Yeah, totally.
The general purpose. Here we go.
Yeah. And then next in the sequence,
you could even have the emissive element of it maybe come up from the bottom. Sorry, yeah, you guys were trying to move on.
Yeah.
So the design.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways you could do this, where it still maintains that that ambient occlusion and the kind of like shading from the lighting. I would perhaps maybe try something other than the emission, but for time's sake, let me get this bird animating in here. And yeah, go for it.
Cody, let's maybe go back to the stream so that we can, because I'm still curious. I do have still a couple questions, and we want to leave the floor 5 minutes if there are any from the community. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see it up. How did that turn up? I just wanna. Here we go. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you very much for improvising. We got you through this.
Totally. Yeah, we're doing it live.
So let me just stop this streaming, otherwise quickly, and here we go. So is that okay? Should finish at some point. So now animation has been, let's say, a team effort, in a sense that, of course, it's design, it's development, but there has also been heavily involved our community users who have provided several rounds of feedback. So I would like to ask you, how has the feature evolved over time, and what have you learned, in a sense, and how that evolved with this intense user testing? Michael.
We did a lot of user testing and iterations. Like, I think we went through like 3 or 4 rounds, like iterations, user test, iteration, user test. Cody remembers I think the original version of it. It was way more, it was a little too complex. But yeah, we really dialed in. We really wanted it to be discoverable. We really wanted it to be simple. and we want it to be fast. And so like we just kept testing, iterating. I think the breakthrough was like kind of merging. We had like scenes and scene states, and then we're just like, no, frames. We kind of flattened the hierarchy, and I think it, felt more familiar and it felt simpler.
And maybe let's say what about you from a designer perspective, right? So if we take this like many other features, but I think these, I personally felt, based on also seeing this from happening from the backstage, went through a lot of iteration, maybe more some than others, right? That maybe where it's kind of like technical improvements, for example, like materials or something like this. What have you learned, and maybe what can you share with people that you think might help them when addressing or evaluating users' feedback?
I think it's important to like, you don't get hung up on any one piece of feedback, right? Like you're looking for trends, and like if something might bother one person, and like just because one person doesn't like something or doesn't get something, it doesn't mean like that thing. Like you need to test your hypothesis with multiple people, right? I guess the other thing would be, sometimes you need to like, it's important to like, is the feature unintuitive or is it difficult to discover? Because those can be different things, right? Like if anyone uses Figma, you know that if you hold down Shift, you can multi-select, right? Like that's not discoverable, but it is intuitive once you've learned it. So there's certain things you have to find a balance there. We really like, you have to also like know your audience, and like, right, like if a feature, if sometimes like certain features are like more advanced, and like you can be less concerned that like new users might not find them. Like certain features and materials aren't for someone who picked up shapes for the first time, but animation is for someone who picked up shapes for the first time. So we really wanted to get get to that moment of magic as fast as possible. So that was part of the reason we enabled animation in edit mode, right? So as soon as you've created we made it, really added like a big obvious plus button next to the first frame. You click it, you move something, and now immediately you have animation, right? So you can, it can be your first 5 minutes in shapes, and you might animate something, and that's what we're really shooting for.
This is a very interesting point. I didn't think about, because of course I've experienced it always when animation is in edit mode, but that could be in a choice. No, animation is only in play mode, and then it would be much harder to discover.
And sometimes your dev team will really push back on that. And you're like, no, it's the right decision.
This has to happen. So, and I mean, of course, heads up to also our amazing developers, because honestly,
like this is a bottom, like we had to, like our development team, they rewrote the entire architecture, right? Like shapes used to be every single scene was its own thing. Now like there's only one scene in shapes and everything is on frames. Every object is all states. So like it required, not only did we have to rewrite shape, like basically the architecture from scratch, we also then had to be able to port old spaces into the new architecture. So no, our dev team did an incredible job. I mean, this is one of those things where you're kind of getting at the core of the product. And so like it touches everything. And so like the fact that we were able to ship it in the time that we did is I truly a testament to our dev team.
Absolutely. So I'm still curious if there is any question in the audience right before we close up, but I do have one more question from Cody, and that is, what have you learned instead when conducting user testing? And maybe first, how do you conduct, if so, user testing, like about a bit of the technicalities, and what have you learned from it that maybe you could share with people to help them through their developing the product?
Sure. Are you referring to like the animation feature in particular?
No, I'm talking about you as a designer, right? Without necessarily thinking about animation.
Yeah. You want to get them as close to the final product as possible. So using these kind of immersive mediums and user testing, especially in a way that you, the tester, you can control. So the like sync mode is really crucial, because you just get them in the headset, you get them into sync mode, and then from there you can drive. So I think the ability for the tester to conduct things and drive things is important, which means it's all more important to have it kind of like behave with the animation that it would in the final product. So, anytime that you're using these mid fidelity, like lower fidelity, quick iterative prototypes, you are left filling gaps when you're talking with a participant of like, now imagine this, imagine that, imagine this logo like pops up from the water. Having the animation and like the tweening lets you kind of close those gaps a lot more than you would before. You don't have to like tell them to kind of like have the suspension of disbelief. So I'm really excited about those features because getting them in something that is as close to the final product is key.
And when it comes to more broadly evaluating the results of user testing and what you have shared with early prototypes, how do you go about that?
You got to record everything. Absolutely. You don't want just your recording of looking at them. You want the recording from the headset because there's so much information that is associated with what are they looking at. I mean, there are enormous industries that like try to approximate this on websites and on mobile and like create hotspots of where people are looking. And by putting them in a headset and recording the footage there, you get like a real-time account of what did they stare at, what did they try to boop, because you have these 6 DOF control tracked controllers. You know exactly what they're trying to like poke at and jab at, and they will, because in VR space, it's everything is intuitively boopable. They want to reach out and like and poke it. So kind of like at the opening of this, I cited that 55% of communication is based off of body language stat, and it holds up in user research as well. So being able to have all that information is very useful.
Cody, thank you very much. And so, guys, I really, let's say, thank you very much for being here. I just wanted to, because I think we always underestimate, we always mention about VR. Just wanted to show the beautiful animation created from Cody directly on the web, because that's really what it is. Like, in a sense, when we were discussing also about being able to create and do it and experience it and share it, not just from a headset, but from a web editor, I think it's super powerful. And this just shows specifically that animation created in.
Yeah, so you can actually see like the little icons in between the frames represent the type of transition, the easing. So like the ones that are a step are an instant transition. Those are from the old space. And then you can see that between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4, you actually have like a 0.3 second transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I appreciate how you did that, because it's non-destructive to any of my old projects. You know, I went back and gave it a try, and nothing got messed up or borked, because you just use those linear interpolations for everything. So well done on that. All of my old projects are safe. And I can go back. I mean, we did it in the course of this stream. Like, I went back to a project I made at least a year ago and gave it some motion in no time. It was great.
And Gab can show that motion from 2 to 3.
Yeah, let's go back.
You can also just click on the frame in the menu.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I made a duplicate of the frame, and I scaled up 2 assets. Like, it was.
And you moved the bird.
Yeah, and I moved the bird.
Yeah. So, guys, I mean, thank you very much. Thank you much for being here. I think that is for sharing your expertise, journey, and also of building this, but also using it and seeing it evolve. So, guys, thank you very much to both of you, and thanks for you guys that have been tuning in. You're listening this live or maybe watching it later. It's been a pleasure, and of course, go back to Shapes on the Meta Store, and directly there, you're gonna get to that magical moment, as Michael said, create 2 frames, move an object around, and you'll be able to animate. And now we have shown only mixed reality, but of course only VR here, but it all works also in mixed reality, right? So that is also another important reminder for everybody. And check the samples, because they are just amazing and give you a really good impression of how everything has been built. So guys, any last remark?
No, I just want to thank you guys and the team. Like, I've had the pleasure of using the app for many, many years now, and seeing this incremental progress of just adding new milestone features. This was a big one. Animation is huge, and I tested it. I had the privilege of testing it several weeks back when it was still kind of like getting polished, and even then, just the first time I got to go between 2 frames and see a cube move across my view, I was freaking out. It was like a big wow moment to have such easy control authoring these things. You're lowering the cost of entry for a lot of people into making these immersive concepts. So well done, you.
Thank you very much, Cody. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't also for you and for the many creative people that are out there harnessing and creating with this new tool. So guys, thank you very much. Michael, Cody, thank you. It was a real pleasure. And thanks to everybody. Think spatial.
Cheers.
Thanks.